Hello everyone and welcome to the SwiftCase Productivity Podcast. My name's Adam Sykes, the founder of SwiftCase, the professional productivity platform, and today we've got a special guest with us. It's Paul Thompson from Westminster Associates.
Morning guys.
And so we'll just introduce everyone else who's here with us today.
Yeah, I'm Craig McCarthy, Development Manager at SwiftCase, located in our Baltic Triangle office in Liverpool.
Hi, I'm Phil. I'm also a developer at Baltic Triangle with Craig.
Great. So Paul, do you want to tell us a bit about what you do in your business?
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, we get people talking to one another. That's the kind of tagline that we use. But essentially, we work probably at three levels of an organisation. We work with executive leaders, founders that are growing businesses or have inherited new teams to help them understand who they've got round the table as a team at the top of the organisation. We then work next level down with those individuals and their teams, helping them understand how to get the best out of the people that work for them. And we also then work really at the sharp end with maybe some customer service and sales people that are interacting with customers. Similar thing, getting them to understand who their customers are and how that interaction can be as comfortable and as valuable as possible.
Yeah, so what sort of background does it come from? What sort of areas does it?
So we use a tool called Insights Discovery.
Yeah.
Insights are a Scottish organisation, and like a lot of organisations, the tools that they use are based on the work of Carl Jung.
Yeah.
Two main schools of thought when it comes to the kind of tools, or psychometrics is the right word that are used. Schools of thought that sit in Freud and Jung, they're normally psychologists that people know and have heard of. And what they did was they took the work of Jung, started to develop their tool in 1984 and put a fresh and a more contemporary spin on a model that they now call Discovery. And for me, the reason I like it is because with a lot of these things, they're a great event or they're memorable on the day.
Yeah.
What Insights Discovery gives clients is the ability to sustain that. It gives them a language they use beyond the day itself. Yeah,
because I think I've been on your one of your days and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really useful, and we've already implemented it in our business. So we've recently been looking at our marketing, as we've mentioned in previous episodes, and looking at buyer personas. All of our buyer personas now have got our ideas of the discovery sort of profiles that these type of people would pick, and some of the keywords that would appeal to those and how we approach those people. So from a marketing perspective, it's been great. And I think also inside our team as well, we've been sort of thinking about how we
have. I mean, the interesting thing I found about our team is we already had quite a diverse workforce personality wise, because we kind of did we used to be for I think about 16 personalities.
Yeah, so that was a similar one, wasn't it? Yeah. So it's a sort of similar process, but
no, it was.
I don't think anyone was the same, were they?
No, they weren't. And it was great, and there was a wide range actually from all the different, the 4 different types really. And range from introverted to extroverted as well. So it boded quite well.
You'd think of in a programming culture, it'd be mostly introverts.
Yeah, that was what shocked me on the day when we did the session was I was expecting you to say, everyone who does this would be introverted because they all like staying in a room. But actually, as I think we found, extroversion doesn't necessarily mean that you are loud and going out. You can be quite extroverted, but be the person who's sat back and listening. But when you've got your sort of what you want to say, you've got ways of getting it out, and it's a bit more nuanced. And I think that's what you might have looked on a website and had a little play with things like that, like we did before I went on the session. But I think to actually get into the detail and have, it was a whole day. You learn a lot, don't you, in this session? What sort of things would if someone took you on, what sort of ideas would come out in a session? How would a session sort of look to someone?
So typically, and it's interesting because I'm smiling as you speak because you're using the language very well. People love labels. We love labels as human beings because it makes it easy to transact. And actually what I try and do is get away from some of the labels. So typically people will say you're an introvert or an extrovert, but it's a scale, there's a mobility. So if you put a group of more introverted individuals together, and some of them are more slightly extroverted, if you pointed at 2 given people and said who's the introvert and who's the extrovert, they would point to the more extroverted introvert and say they're the extrovert. They're not.
Yeah.
They're just a more extroverted introvert. And also, to your point, there's a lot of sort of stereotyping goes on that all programmers or all technical individuals will be highly introverted, or cool blue is the language that we use from a discovery perspective. So typically on a session, we spend the first part of the session in dialogue, doing exactly the kind of thing that it sounds like you've done or that we've done already, because the session is underpinned by a rich profile, a personal profile, and it's a self-score report that people complete before, and they get their profile on the day. The reason we don't give profiles out in advance is because you lose a lot of the richness of the kind of dialogue we're having now. And if I'm honest, if you give anyone a 20-page document all about themselves, they all become a bit selfish, even the most selfless people. The real power of our work, and I think of discovery, is not what I know about me, because I know myself best. It's what I hear my colleagues say, and how I can apply that to my customers. And just listening to you guys then, some of the ways you've used it is exactly what we do. You've used it as a team, and you've also used it to think about who are the decision makers in your customer base. Yeah. So there's a really strong sales piece within Insights that you've not seen, Adam, because we've not used that yet. And I've used that fairly extensively and globally to not train people to sell. These are people that have got a basic understanding of how to sell and are probably in second sales related role, but to give them a really good understanding of the psychology that underpins the sale. So if I have you three guys in front of me as my customer, what makes and facilitates a buy decision with yourself might be completely opposite of what makes a buy decision with you. And people say, well, how do you do that? And I think as human beings in any situation, as a customer, as a member of a team, we face that situation every day. Yeah, I do. I walk into a room of 20 people to run a workshop, and I will have lots of different types. So we don't talk about changing, we talk about adapting your style to get the best out of the interaction.
Yeah, I think that was a key thing that I took away, was one of the ways where you can sort of try and work out how someone is just from interacting with them. Obviously you can't go and ask your customers to please fill out this profile before I sell to you, and then but picking up on triggers of things they say or how they would ask you, and methods of communication. Maybe they use emails more than they'll want to pick up the phone. They're a bit more, are their emails 4 pages long? It starts telling you something. So I think that was a key thing about how you can sort of work out how the people you're interacting with,
even what like social media, you think?
So you can get little triggers. So that was a really interesting thing that I thought came out from the day when I did it, and some of the material came back with. So you've mentioned some of the misconceptions about introversion and extroversion. Are there any other misconceptions people have about personalities and psychometrics that maybe people need to understand that might be getting in the way of taking the benefit of this?
Absolutely, and if anyone works with you, you'll hear me repeat certain things, and they tend to get louder as the session goes on, because we're there on the day, but it's great if clients become custodians of the right perception and the right use of language. And there is a right and wrong with some things, and with others there's not. So the first thing is what we do is not about personality. And personality is far more complex than just our preferred ways of behaving at work. Our background, religion, our upbringing, our interests, our sense of humour, these things all inform personality. Insights discovery in the work we do just focuses on one element of that. Also, there's a right and wrong use of terminology, but with behaviour, there's not a right and wrong behaviour. And quite often, and this is where we tend to engage with clients, is when teams are under pressure, or when senior leaders are under pressure, or when a salesperson is under pressure to perform, it can become almost a dialogue of, well, my way's better than your way. And actually the healthier, more creative, more innovative dialogue is actually, your way's different to my way. Let's talk about that. It's the two halves make a whole. But quite often under pressure, we all become sort of the bad day version of ourselves and do what we need to do to get us through. So your ability and your willingness to adapt and connect is far less when you're feeling vulnerable.
I think that's a key thing that I saw from the day as well, that you really do recognise aspects of yourself and things to work on. So I don't know whether, when you've got a personality profile, a psychometric profile, and you get this, you get your colour and you get your more detailed version of it. Is that fixed? Can people do things to? Would you say they could change their approach, or is it more learning to work with your approach? And have you changed the way you've sort of your own self? Have you changed your profile over time, or can it change?
Yeah, in short, yes, I have. We tend to avoid words like change. Adapt is a word. A lot of this is semantics. So the tool in our work is based on the work of Carl Jung. Yeah. Jung believed that we grow, we develop as a result of exposure to success and failure, self-awareness. Some of us do, some people don't. And for that reason, the instrument that we use in our approach is very much about point in time. For a tool to be valid, it can't change one day to the next. There needs to be a degree of stability in that. And we say probably 12 to 18 months in terms of the underpinning tool. Yeah. Defining moments will bring about, hopefully, a desire to grow, to change, promotion, demotion, birth, death, marriage, divorce. They're pretty substantial things that can impact the way that we choose to show ourselves, at work on most days, most of the time, or in life. I used to overuse a preference called intuition. And for me, if there's a scale, intuition sits at one end and sensation sits at the other, and they're about the way that we take in and process information. To frame it, sensation is very much about what is. It's to do with the senses, what I can see, touch, hear or smell. Intuition is about what could be. And I knew and I sensed as I started to work at more senior levels of an organisation that I was overusing intuition because I knew where the destination was, and because I could see it, I couldn't understand why the people couldn't see what that was. But individuals that use sensation really need check-ins and signposting. So I've dialed up and I've learned a capability to use more sensation, which has brought about a shift in terms of the order of the colour energies that I use.
I think I'm a key one to hold my hand up for being future oriented and intuition oriented. Dream of things that could be rather than things that are sort of approach. And I've learned from that to maybe put a bit more detail in rather than just the big picture. I'm quite happy to say to people, this is what we're doing, and everyone else wants to know, but how do we, what's going on in between?
A little bit more on the present rather than...
So I think it's useful.
And I'm watching you smile with one another, and that's normally one of the biggest learns as you work with senior teams or with people that are interacting with customers, is they think they're all speaking the same language, but the way in which they're communicating it is completely different. Especially when in a senior team you may have a group of more introverted, extroverted individuals, and again this is back to the labels. People will think they're all the same because they all share a preference for extroversion. But if you start to then pair that with some of the secondary preferences, so extroversion with intuition and extroversion with sensation, introversion with intuition, introversion with sensation, can really manifest in terms of quite different pathways and needs of the individuals.
So in that situation there, that makes me, and I might be carrying a lot of naive sort of biases, but in that situation, if you had extroversion with intuition, extroversion with sensation, with the conflict, mostly the public conflict between those two would be a higher chance of that, and then the introverted one would be more likely to shrink from that conflict, and then, or is that like a...
It's the same process. It just manifests in a different way. So let me give you an example. So somebody that uses extroverted intuition can take a direction from their boss, and say their boss is the MD or CEO of a company, and before the MD has finished briefing them, will probably be on their way out the door wanting to tell everybody about it or brainstorm how they get to the destination. Their colleague next to them, who still could be more extroverted but uses sensation, will want to go away for an hour or so.
Interesting.
And just plot how we'll get there, how we know we'll get there. And so you can imagine his view of the world as he sees his other more extroverted peer going out and briefing his team on what's just been said in the boardroom. He'll have a very different view on that. But again, and that's where we really start to unpick some of this, because people assume we're all the same, and we're not. And in a more introverted way, the same thing would happen, but just it will be going on inside somebody's head. So you'll get a colleague that is exceptionally intuitive combined with their introversion. And if you give them an empty baked bean tin, some string and some twigs, they'll go away quietly into the garden shed on a Sunday afternoon and come back like a magician with a rabbit out of a hat of a contraption that stops the squirrels from stealing the bird nuts. And they'll just announce it, and they've done it quietly. Whereas somebody that uses sensation before they even went near any of the materials or near a process will want past evidence and proof and to plan the whole thing out.
Before they start. I see. That's really interesting.
That's fascinating.
So obviously this can lead to quite, big impacts. Certainly I found it's, led to a big impact on how I approach, how I communicate with my own team. So when we're coming up with projects, the level of detail and the various approaches I take, and with different staff using different approaches. And obviously we're already using it for our marketing as well, and actually how we approach customers and deal with our customers. But what's sort of the most dramatic impact you've seen when you've been into an organisation?
For me, and we've done some work, a lot of work now in San Francisco since 2012, which, if I'm honest, came as a referral from one customer here to one of their customers there. And we started to do quite a lot of work in tech organisations that were in high growth mode, with venture capitalists pouring money into an organisation for one of two things: to make it successful enough to sell, or to make them successful enough in their own right. Or the third one is that it doesn't work. And we chatted a lot with some of the VCs out there, and we asked them the question: do you invest in the idea or the person? And they said the person every single time, in terms of the first round of funding at least. So probably, to answer the question, the most dramatic turnaround we've seen is working with a chief exec and his team that took an organisation from 40 to 80 to 400 people that was then acquired by one of the big US giants, and did exceptionally well, commercially, lucratively, and from in terms of their product. So we're proud to have been part of that journey, and what we did was only a small part of that, with that chief exec and his team as that organisation grew. I think on a more transactional scale, we've worked with sales teams, we've worked with sales leaders, we've worked with internal teams in a similar situation where organisations are growing. And you've got sales teams selling things that the developers have not even developed yet. So you'll get a lot of internal conflict. But again, nobody comes to work to upset one another, but it can result in dialogue that can be strained and can start to break down some of those keys to success, like internal collaboration. And the more people you add in and the bigger an organisation gets, the more amplified the problem becomes. Salespeople want to sell, that's what they do best. Engineers want to develop things well and in a qualitative way. And that is a really good example, actually, of typically you may find a lot of intuition will sit in the sales world, and a lot of sensation sometimes will sit in an engineering and development.
So is there more of a split that way than there is with introversion and extroversion then?
Not necessarily. More introverted individuals tend to populate, if I'm thinking from experience here, of some of those more technical engineering, product development type roles. I mean, that's the whole Jung and Freud kind of debate. Am I who I am because of the job that I do? Or have I become who I am? Did I do the job that I did because of who I am?
Accountants was a key one for us. We do a lot with finance companies, and I think, they want all the numbers, they like spreadsheets, are they sort of the introverted,
sensation.
So are they those types of people? And I think but that was the surprise in our team, was there was we weren't who we thought we'd be. We thought we're a tech company, we'll all be developers and we'd all be the introverted kind of squirreled away. But actually it was more shifted the other way in our case. And I don't know whether that's the culture in our company that we try and hire for the person and so on, and we try and get people who are really keen and interested and outgoing, and maybe that's how it's been driven. I don't know, but we weren't what we expected. And I think that's something you might think you were a certain way, but then you need someone to open your eyes to the reality of things are quite not always that straightforward. And I think that's something you do need, that someone else to come in and show you, because you make these assumptions and you do assume based on you know, certainly if everyone's working in a department like you said, all the engineers are the same, all the sales people are the same. There could be people in each part who are pretty good at communicating with each other because they've got overlaps, or people can learn ways of communicating better. And at the end of the day, that makes a business more productive, which is what we're sort of about, isn't it? It's like people speaking different languages, isn't it? And you go in and help them to be able to talk to each other. I think that's really great.
And I think that's a really key point that you make. I think, behaviour is one of the overlooked kind of diversity kind of buckets that some of them are very obvious, but diversity is normally, behaviour is normally the thing that people miss. And I think organisations that can harness that behavioural diversity, because people think the best team is a mixed team. Well, it is to one degree, but without understanding a diverse group of individuals in a team also have the chance or the opportunity to really frustrate one another sometimes if they don't understand how they work. For me, the best mix is based on what the team's trying to achieve. There will be points in your growth as an organisation and in your clients' growth where you will need to be dialing up and using behaviours that once you're in a more stable and sustainable environment, you absolutely wouldn't do. And again, it's important. Our preferred way of behaving is not the only way. We can all learn different ways of behaving. We can all learn different capabilities. Carl Jung spoke about energy. And Insights took the work of Jung and added colour, because we can't see energy, but we can see colour, so it made it more usable. And that's where this conversation about effort comes full circle, because if I'm behaving in a way that's not preferred for me, I might be better at doing that than the person next to me, but the amount of energy that it takes me to do that will be far greater. So it's not a measure of capability or skill, and again, that's another really important
It's not a ranking. There's not one better than the other, and I think that's key. So if someone wants to take advantage of all the things we've been talking today, how can they take it forward with yourselves and with Westminster Associates? What's the best way to get started?
I think, in a very transactional way, find us online, on social media. But for me, our style is not one of a fait accompli. It's quite consultative. So I think when you're all about dialogue, the first thing that I say to people is let's talk. It costs nothing to talk. And sometimes you reach a conclusion that actually now is exactly the right time to engage, or actually not quite yet, but it's really, for me personally, quite interesting just to stay close to the businesses if it's not just yet, and re-engage with them when the time is right. Businesses typically reach a critical mass from a communication, from a psychological perspective, where they need to get their arms around these kind of things. Equally, I met with a client a few weeks back, and they said, you're probably horrified that we've got to 3,000 employees without having our arms around this kind of thing. But not really, because actually everybody sees the world in a different way. There's a lot of organisations like that.
Great. Well, thanks very much for coming in. It's really been interesting, and I think every business needs to have a think about these things, and go and check out online Westminster Associates. We'll put all the details below on the video, and we'll put them in the comments of the podcast. So thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks everyone for listening. It's been the SwiftCase Productivity Podcast. My name's Adam Sykes, founder of SwiftCase, and we'll see you next time.
And don't forget to check us out on social media. We're on Twitter at SwiftCase UK. We're also on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and pretty much everywhere else you can think of. And check out our website, swiftcase.co.uk, for more information about some of the things we do.
Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe, click the bell below, and get notified of any more special podcasts and interviews that I'm going to do.
Okay, and if you've got any comments about what we've been talking about today, or you've got your own ideas about psychometrics and what's going on, leave a comment below, and we'll catch up there. Thanks everyone. See you next time. Thanks. Bye.